What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Average Bob coming in with a Week 13 preview for your New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders. Still always trip up saying Commanders. Feel like I want to say Redskins, but you know, I didn't even get used to saying Washington football team. But anyway, let's dive into things here. As the Giants are 2.5-point underdogs at home on Sunday, and plus 115 on the money line. Again, the Giants are underdogs here, so back to where we were to start that first half of the season, where we had a bunch of upsets versus the Packers, the Ravens, the Titans, to name a few. First and foremost, this is a huge matchup versus the Washington Commanders, with major playoff implications of what is to come. And it's really a must-win game any way you slice it, as we are diving into the really heated division schedule part of the season. And having lost to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, this really is a must-win game as we play the Commanders twice in the next 3 weeks with the Eagles sandwiched in between. So for us to make the playoffs this season, it's really going to come down to starting with a win this Sunday at home versus the Commanders. Diving into Washington, they have a 7-5 record, and they did beat the Atlanta Falcons last Sunday, 19-13. I didn't watch any of this game, but the box score did look pretty ugly from both sides. Washington quarterback Taylor Heinicke had 138 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And running back Brian Robinson did have over 100 rushing yards. So looking at that, maybe he is trending in the right direction. I mean, the Falcons aren't anything to write home about. Obviously, we know that. But, you know, the Giants haven't done a great job of stopping the run. So that's something I would look forward to seeing in this week's matchup, is if we could kind of just really neutralize Brian Robinson and make a pretty bad Taylor Heinicke try and beat you. So the Giants are going to need to do a good job of stopping Brian Robinson, as the Giants haven't done a good job of stopping the run recently. So that's something to keep an eye on as the game progresses and that Giants front seven gets more tired throughout the game. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin is going to be an X factor in this game any way you slice it. I'm just going to post the stats on the screen here and talk over a couple things. Terry McLaurin always has good games versus the Giants. Per StatMuse, he's totaled 475 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the Giants in 5 career games. A telling stat is that he averages over 7 receptions with 9 targets and almost 100 yards versus us per game. So I'm definitely going to be looking at some Terry McLaurin stats here from receptions and yardage props. Because with our secondary pretty banged up right now, Dory Jackson being out, who was that primary cover corner, and just looking at the data, right, Terry McLaurin will probably go off and have a big game. His over-under receiving yards on DraftKings are 61.5 and over 4.5 receptions. I'm going to lean both on these. Just looking at the data in front of you, it shows that these are probabilities to hit. And honestly, as much as I do hate Washington, I do respect Terry McLaurin. He isn't a diva cocky punk wide receiver. He plays the game the right way and seems to be a pretty good guy. Anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a McLaurin love fest because this is a Giants YouTube channel. So let's move on to focusing on some Giants keys for success to win on Sunday. The Giants need to get the pass rush going a little bit more. They did have 9 quarterback hits against the Cowboys, but 0 sacks. So the data is showing that they are getting to the quarterback and making him throw the ball quickly, but it's just not ending up on the stat column in sacks. And it's got to be frustrating for a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, right? Like, I feel like he played his best game of the season last week versus the Cowboys and just didn't really get on the stat sheet in the sacks column. But again, you know, what we've seen from him so far is he's making plays, he's being a linchpin on the Giants defense, and he's getting to the quarterback, but it's just not resulting in sacks. But again, you know, data will show that that is going to eventually come as the season progresses. The Redskins really don't have a great offensive line, so I'm looking to see that pass rush coming out the gate pretty aggressively, and also seeing Dexter Lawrence continuing to have another great game, as he has been having a great season so far. He's having a great season so far with 5 quarterback sacks and 18 quarterback hits. And he is also on pace for a career high in tackles and tackles for loss. So he's really doing everything on that defensive front right now, especially being at that defensive tackle position. So hats off to Sexy Dexy. Let's keep it rolling against the Commanders in Week 13. From the Commander side of things, 2020 second overall NFL draft pick Chase Young is about to make his season debut after brutally tearing his ACL in week 9 of last season. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of snap count he has or what kind of impact he has in this game. I'm sure that, it's hard to say about, Washington historically, doing the right things by their players who have had bad knee injuries and rushing them back, looking at Robert Griffin III, for example. But obviously, I almost said Redskins there. The Washington Commanders have changed, right? So let's see what they do with Chase Young here. Honestly, I think the safe play would be to, nurse him back in, give him limited reps, but just get him back in NFL competition. And, honestly, he did have that such high potential. So I hope he can make a comeback and be successful for them, honestly. Another major key for the Giants will be getting Saquon Barkley back to his form that we saw in the first half of this season. After his huge game with 35 carries for 152 yards and a touchdown versus the Texans, he's been relatively quiet. And in those past 2 games, he averaged 22 yards and 39 yards, his 2 lowest of the season output-wise. And what I think, this is something that happens as the season progresses when there's more tape on why teams are successful. Defensive coordinators are obviously looking at that and breaking down the film of what other teams have done against their future opponents and where they have had success. So now that we've had, 10, 11 weeks of film on Saquon and how the Giants offense is successful by pounding the rock, that leads NFL defensive coordinators to say, okay, I'm going to stack the box and make Daniel Jones beat us by passing the ball because the Giants have no wide receivers to do that with. So they're going to have to be creative, right? So what you've seen the last 2 weeks, obviously, was teams stacking the box against the Giants, which led to down games from Saquon, where he never got going. He averaged also his worst yards per carry this season. The Giants are going to have to come out the gate and set the tone, set the line of scrimmage in the first quarter, really knocking the Commanders' defensive linemen off the ball and try to get Saquon going. If we could get an explosive 1 or 2 plays, that'll really set the tone for the game and give Saquon that confidence that he's lacked the last 2 weeks. You have seen more Gary Brightwell in the mix and also Matt Breida, but it's great that we've seen them. But for the Giants to be successful and win games, you got to get Saquon going again. And per DraftKings, Saquon's over-under rushing yardage is at 70.5, which is significantly lower from where it's been the last few weeks. So I'm going to hit the over on this one. He's got to get back to form, and it's going to start up front. And there's a couple of reasons why. Up front, the Giants are getting back not only 1, but 2 huge options up front, with Jon Feliciano coming back to take center duties, which will likely put Nick Gates at left guard, which is great. Love to see that. And on the right side of the line, we're going to be getting back rookie Evan Neal. Obviously, Jon Feliciano and Evan Neal were key to Saquon's success in the first half of that season. So having them back and hopefully a little bit more, refresh and as close to 100% as possible to come back. Obviously, everyone's banged up. It's the NFL. You're never going to be 100% healthy, but trying to be as, injury-free and, contributing as possible to help this offensive line get him back on track is going to be huge. I love Nick Gates slotted into that left guard role. After his injury last year, I personally thought we wouldn't see him again just because that injury was so bad. But kudos to him. He's a badass, and I'm so glad he's back. So, love having him at left guard. He's also a leader on that offensive line. And Nick Gates next to Andrew Thomas, what's better than that? Giants are also going to be getting some help back in the secondary. Seems like everything is trending towards Fabian Moreau coming back. Obviously he's not the best, but it is better than these practice squad guys that had to make I don't want to discredit them too bad. They had a monster opportunity against the Cowboys and they got their asses kicked. But you're going against CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. They do that against, cream of the crop DBs. And, maybe I got to give it a little bit more respect to the practice squad guys showing up in that game, even though we did lose. Last but not least, we are going to potentially see Daniel Bellinger make his comeback after he broke his eye socket earlier in the season, which was a terrible injury. So I think he'll be coming back, and he'll likely look something along the lines of a crazy-looking helmet, probably dark visor. Maybe it'll even look something like this. Just kidding, but a Mandalorian face mask would be pretty badass, and maybe they, should mock that up for him. Defensive end and Azeez Ojulari was also activated off the IR this week. Be interested to see if he actually makes it to the game and can play. He's really had a sophomore slump this year with a calf injury that's really limited him to only a number of games this season where he hasn't had a major impact. Similar to what I said about Chase Young, when Azeez does come back, he'll probably be on a limited snap count. He's not going to play, every single snap and, be a huge contributor. And that's fine because they still have O'Shane Ximines, who's been playing, mediocre this year. But it is another set of fresh legs that the Giants can use to rotate against that pretty bad Commanders offensive front. I am recording this on Thursday afternoon, and I did see that Darius Slayton had an illness. I don't know. I saw a funny meme the other day about guys getting sick this time of year and blaming it on the seasonal temperature, stuff along those lines. And hopefully he is just kind of sick and not really sick. And I feel like everyone's getting sick these days. So hopefully he's good to go to the game because really we have no one else. Which brings me to my next point about not having any wide receivers is Odell, who made his visit with the Giants today. Odell must have walked into that wide receiver room and been like, wow, you guys really need me. And it's pretty remarkable that you actually got to this point without having anyone. And you're paying this guy over here $19 million this season, and he sucks and doesn't do anything and barely catches the ball. You guys need me. It seems like Odell is ready to come back at this point in his rehab stint. He is going to be visiting with a couple other teams, as noted in the tweet from Art Stapleton. But I think it's going to come down if Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen want to take a risk on bringing Odell into this locker room because they have created a new culture and regime. And it's not like it was 4 years ago, the last time he was here. A lot has changed. And would he want to buy into that change? I think maybe he would. But again, if Odell does come here, there's going to be so much significant pressure on him to perform right off the bat coming off a torn ACL only, a handful of months ago in February, right? So it's a tough sell probably to get Odell here, especially if he was really, watching that Cowboys game. When you look and see CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup dominating, he doesn't have to be, the key playmaker that everyone's going to be looking towards. He could be an asset surrounded by playmakers. So it's not going to be all on him like it would be if you would come the Big Blue. And then I believe the other team he was looking at is the Bills, which would be awesome for them. If you haven't seen my Odell video where I break down him potentially reuniting with Big Blue, please check it out. I'll link it in the comments as well. Kind of break down his career and why it would make sense for him to come back at this point. I mean, also there's not too much to say besides just look at our wide receiver depth chart. It's really, really bad, and we need as much help as possible. And if he's down to come back, I think we take him. But I explain a lot more of that in the video. My prediction for this game, Giants 24, Washington Commanders 23. I almost said it again. We're going to look at Terry McLaurin over receptions and receiving yards, Saquon over rushing yards, and then, of course, we're going to take Giants money line and getting 2.5. We'll see if that changes. But anyway, I'm super pumped for this must-win game. I'm going to be tailgating at MetLife Stadium, so if you guys are around, come say hi. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up in the DMs or whatever. We'll link up. I'd love to meet some of you guys, and like always, let's go Giants.